Good wishes to all of you. Our past one, Chapter 9, Traders, Kings and Pilgrims. Jagni at the market. Jagni looked forward to the fair in the village. She loved to see and touch the pots and pans of shiny steel, bright plastic buckets, cloth printed with brilliant floral designs, and clockwork toys, all of which came from the city. The men who spread out their wares came in buses and trucks and went back at the end of the day. Why were they always on the move? She wondered. Her mother explained that there were traders, people who bought things where they were made and sold them elsewhere. How to find out about trade and traders? You read about the northern black polished ware in chapter 9. This fine pottery, especially bowls and plates, were found from several archaeological sites throughout the subcontinent. How do you think it reached these places? Traders may have carried them from the places where they were made to sell them at other places. South India was famous for gold, spices, especially pepper, and precious stones. Pepper was particularly valued in the Roman Empire, so much so that it was known as black gold. So traders carried many of these golds to Roman ships across the sea and by land in caravans. There must have been quite a lot of trade as many Roman gold coins have been found in South India. Can you think of how and why these reached India? A poem about trade. We can find the evidence of trade in the Sangam poems. Here is one which describes the goods brought into Puhar, an important port on the east coast. Here are brought swift prancing horses by sea in ships, bales of black pepper in carts, gems and gold bonds in Himalaya, sandalwood born in the western hills, the perils of the South Indian seas and corals from the eastern oceans, the yield of the Ganga and the crops from the Kaveri, foodstuff from Sri Lanka, pottery from Myanmar, and others rare and rich importance. Imports. Make a list of all the things that are mentioned. What would they be used for? Traders explored several sea routes. Some of these followed the coast. There were others across the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, where sailors took advantage of the monsoon winds to cross the seas more quickly. So, if they wanted to reach the western coast of the subcontinent from East Africa or Arabia, they chose to sail with the southwest monsoon, and sturdy ships had to be built for these long journeys. New kingdoms along the coast. The southern half of the subcontinent is marked by a long coastline and with hills, flats, and river valleys. Among us, the river valley, that of the Kaveri, is the most fertile. Chiefs and kings who control the river valleys and the coast become rich and powerful. Sangam poems mention the Muvendar. This is a Tamil word meaning three chiefs, used for the head of three ruling families, the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas, who became powerful in South India around 2300 years ago. Each of the three chiefs had two centers of power, one in land and one on the coast. Of these six cities, two were very important: Puhar or Kaveripattanam, the port of the Cholas, and Madurai, the capital of the Pandyas. The chiefs did not collect regular taxes. Instead, they demand and receive gifts from the people. They also went on military expeditions and collected tribute from neighboring areas. They kept some of the wealth and distributed the rest amongst their supporters, including members of their family, soldiers, and poets. Many poets whose compositions are found in the Sangam collection composed poems in praise of chiefs who often rewarded them with precious stones, gold, horses, elephants, chariots, and fine cloth. Around 200 years later, a dynasty known as the Shatavahanas became powerful in western India. The most important ruler of the Shatavahanas was Gautamiputra Sri Shatakarni. We know about him from an inscription composed on behalf of his mother Gautami Balasri. He and other Shatavahana rulers were known as Lords of the Dakshinapatha, literally the route leading to the south, which was also used as a name for the entire southern region. He sent his army to the eastern, western, and southern coast. Why do you think he wanted to control the coast? The story of the Silk Road. The rich, glossy colors of silk, as well as its smooth texture, make it a high valued fabric in most societies. Making silk is a complicated process. Raw silk has to be extracted from the cocoons, cocoons of silkworms, spun into thread and then woven into cloth. Techniques of making silk were first invented in China around 7,000 years ago, while the methods remained a closely guarded secret for thousands of years. Some people from China who went to distant lands on foot, horseback, and on camels carried silk with them. The paths they followed came to be known as the Silk Route. Sometimes Chinese rulers sent gifts of silk to rulers in Iran and West Asia, and from there, the knowledge of silk spread further west about 2000 years ago. Wearing silk became the fashion amongst rulers and rich people in Rome. It was very expensive, as it had to be brought all the way from China, along dangerous roads, throughout mountains and deserts. People living along the route often demanded payments for allowing traders to pass through. Look at map 6, page 84-85, which shows the Silk Route and its branches. Some kings tried to control larger portions of the route. This was because they could benefit from taxes, tributes, and gifts that were brought by traders traveling along the route. In return, they often protected the traders who passed through their kingdoms from attacks by robbers. The best known of the rulers who controlled the Silk Route were the Kushanas, who ruled over Central Asia and North and West India around 2000 years ago. Their two major centers of power were Peshawar and Mathura. Taxila was also included in their kingdom. During their rule, a branch of the Silk Road extended from Central Asia down to the seaports at the mouth of the river Indus, from where silk was shipped westwards to the Roman Empire. The Kushanas were most amongst the earliest rulers of the subcontinent to issue gold coins. These were used by traders along the Silk Road. Why do you think it would have been difficult to use carts along the Silk Road? Silk was also sent from China by sea. Trace the routes on map 6. What do you think would have been the advantages and problems in transporting silk by sea? Look at the image. A sculpture from the stupa at Sanchi. Look at the tree and the empty seat below it. Sculptures carved this to indicate that the Buddha had attained enlightenment while meditating under the tree. The spread of Buddhism. The most famous Kushana ruler was Kanishka, who ruled around 1900 years ago. He organized a Buddhist council where scholars met and discussed important matters. Ashwagosha, a poet who composed a biography of the Buddha Charita, lived in his court. Ashwagosha and other Buddhist scholars now began writing in Sanskrit, a new form of Buddhism known as Mahayana Buddhism now developed. This had two distinct features. Earlier, the Buddha's presence was shown in sculpture by using certain signs. For instance, his attainment of enlightenment was shown by sculptures of the peepal tree. Now, statues of the Buddha were made. Many of these were made in Mathura, while others were made in Taxila. The second change was their belief in bodhisattvas. These were supposed to be persons who had attained enlightenment. Once they attained enlightenment, they could live in the complete isolation and meditate in peace. However, instead of doing that, they remained in the world to teach and help other people. The worship of bodhisattvas became very popular and spread throughout Central Asia, China, and later to Korea and Japan. Buddhism also spread to western and southern India, where dozens of caves were hollowed out of hills for monks to live in. Look at the images. Below left, an image of the Buddha from Mathura. Right, a image of the Buddha from Taxila. Look at these and note the similarities and differences that you may find. Some of these caves were made on the orders of kings and queens, others by merchants and farmers. These were often located near passes throughout the Western Ghats. Roads connected prosperous ports on the coast with cities in the Deccan ran throughout these passes. Traders probably halted in these cave monasteries during their travels. Buddhism also spread south and eastwards to Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, and other parts of Southeast Asia. Asia include Indonesia. The older form of Bodhisattva known as Theravada Buddhism was more popular in these areas. Look at the image, a cave at Karli, Maharashtra. Read page 100 once more. Can you think of how Buddhism spread to these lands? The quest of the pilgrims. As traders journeyed to distant lands in caravans and ships, pilgrims often traveled with them. Pilgrims are men and women who undertake journeys to holy places in order of worship. Order to offer worship. The best known of these are the Chinese Buddhist pilgrims. Faxian, who came to the subcontinent about 1600 years ago, Zhongzhang, who came around 1400 years ago, and Akwang, who came about 50 years after Zhongzhang. They came to visit places associated with the life of the Buddha, as well as famous monasteries. Each of these pilgrims left an account of his journey. They wrote of the dangers they encountered on their travels, which often took years of the countries and the monasteries that they visited, and the books they carried back with them. How Faxian returned to China. Faxian began his journey back home from Bengal. He boarded a ship belonging to some merchants. They had barely traveled for 2 days when they were caught in a storm. The merchants began throwing their merchandise overboard so as to lighten the load and save the ship from sinking. Faxian threw away his maid's personal belongings but clung to his books and the statue of the Buddha that he had collected. Finally, his books and the statues of the Buddha that he had collected. Sorry. Finally, the storm subsided after 13 days. This is how he described the sea. The sea itself is boundless in extent. It is impossible to know east or west except by observing the sun, moon, or stars in their motions. If it is dark, rainy weather, the only plan is to steer by the wind. It took him more than 90 days to reach Java, where he halted for 5 months before boarding another merchant ship that took him to China. Try and trace the route Faxian took on map 6. Page 85. Why do you think he did not want to throw away his books and statues? Zhongzhang, who took the land road back to China, throughout the northwest and central Asia, carried back with him statues of the Buddha made of gold, silver, and sandalwood, and over 1600 manuscripts loaded on the backs of 20 horses. Over 50 manuscripts were lost when the boat on which he was crossing the Indus capsized. He spent the rest of his life translating the remaining manuscripts from Sanskrit into Chinese. Nalen, a unique center of Buddhist learning. Zungzang and other pilgrims spent time studying in Nalen, Bihar, the most famous Buddhist monastery of the period. This is how he described it. The teachers are men of the highest ability and talent. They follow the teachings of the Buddha in all sincerity. The rules of the monastery are strict and everyone has to follow them. Discussions are held throughout the day, and the old and the young mutually help one another. Learned men from different cities come here to settle their doubts. The gatekeeper asks new entrants difficult questions. They are allowed to enter only after they have been able to answer these. 7 or 8 out of every 10 are not able to answer. List the reasons why Zhongzhang wanted to study in Nalan. The beginning of Bhakti. This was also the time when the worship of certain deities, which became a central feature of later Hinduism, gained in importance. These deities include Shiva, Vishnu, and goddesses such as Durga. These cities were worshipped through Bhakti, an idea that became very popular at this time. Bhakti is generally understood as a person's devotion to his or her chosen deity. Anybody, whether rich or poor, belonging to the so called higher low castes, man or woman, could follow the path of Bhakti. The idea of Bhakti is present in the Bhagavad Gita, a sacred book of the Hindus which is included in the Mahabharata. See chapter 12 in the Krishna the God asks Arjuna, his devotee and friend, to abandon all dharmas and take refuge in him, as only he can set Arjuna free from every evil. These forms of worship gradually spread to different parts of the country. Those who followed the system of bhakti emphasized devotion and individual worship of a god or goddess rather than the performance of elaborate sacrifices. According to this system of belief, if a devotee worships the chosen deity with a pure heart, the deity will appear in the form in which he or she may desire. So the deity could be thought of as a human being, lion, tree, or any other form. Once this idea gained acceptance, artists made beautiful images of these deities. Look at the image. Vishnu as Varaha, an image from Iran, Madhya Pradesh. This magnificent statue is of a special form of Vishnu, the Varaha or boar. According to the Puranas, see chapter 12, Vishnu took the shape of a boar in order to rescue the earth, which had sunk into water. Here, the earth is shown as a woman. Bhakti comes from the Sanskrit term bhas meaning to divide or share. This suggests an intimate two-way relationship between the deity and the devotee. Bhakti is directed towards Bhagavat, which is often translated as God but also means one who possesses and shares bhaga, literally good fortune or bliss. The devotee known as the Bhakta or the Bhagavata shares his or her chosen deity's bhaga. A poem by a Bhakta. Most Bhakti literature tells us that riches, learning, and high status do not automatically ensure a close relationship with the deity. This is part of a poem composed in Tamil by Appar, a devotee of Shiva who lived about 1400 years ago. Appar was a Vellala, chapter 9. The leper with rotting limbs, the man who is regarded as low by the Brahmin, even the scavenger. Even these men, if they are servants that are gods, devotees, of him who shelters the Ganga in his long hair, that is Shiva. I worship them. They are gods to me. What does the what does the poet regard as more valuable, social status or devotion? Because the deities were special, these images of the deity were often placed within special homes. places that we describe as temples. You will learn more about these temples in chapter 12. Bhakti inspired some of the best expressions in art, sculpture, poetry, and architecture. Hindu. The word Hindu, like the term India, is derived from the river Indus. It was used by Arabs and Iranians to refer to people who lived to the east of the river and to their cultural practices, including religious beliefs. Elsewhere, about 2000 years ago, Christianity emerged in West Asia. Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem, which was then part of the Roman Empire. Christ's teaching were that he was the savior of the world. He also taught people to treat others with love and trust others, just as they themselves wanted to be treated. Here are a few verses from the Bible, the holy book that contains the teachings of Christ. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst from righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Christ's teaching appealed to ordinary people and spread throughout West Asia, Africa, and Europe. The first Christian preachers came from West Asia to the west coast of the subcontinent within 100 years of Christ's death. Look at map 6, page 84-85 and trace out the route that they may have used. The Christians of Kerala, known as Syrian Christians because they probably came from West Asia, are most are among us the oldest Christian communities in the world. Keywords: Trader, Movender, Root, Silk, Kushanas, Mahayana, Theravada, Bodhisattva, Pilgrim, Bhakti. Imagine you have a manuscript which a Chinese pilgrim would like to carry back with him. Describe your conversation. Let's recall much the following. Movender, Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas, lords of the Dakshinapatha, Shatvahana rulers, Ashwagosha, Buddha Charita, Bodhisattvas, Mahayana Buddhism, Zunzang, Chinese pilgrim. Some important dates: discovery of silk making about 7000 years ago. The Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas about 2300 years ago. Growing demand for silk in the Roman Empire about 2000 years ago. Kanishka, the Kushan ruler, about 1900 years ago. Faxian comes to India about 1600 years ago. Zumzang comes to India. Upper composes devotion poems in praise of Shiva about 1400 years ago. Question number 2. Why did kings want to control the Silk Route? Question number 3. What kind of evidence do historians use to find out about trade and trade routes? Question number 4. What were the main features of Bhakti? Let's discuss question number 5. Discuss the reasons why the Chinese pilgrims came to India. Question number 6. Why do you think ordinary people were attracted to Bhakti? Let's do. Question number 7. List 5 things that you buy from the market. Which of these are made in the city, village in which you live, and which are brought by traders from other areas? Question number 8. There are several major pilgrimages performed by people in India today. Find out about any one of them and write a short description. Hint: who can go on the pilgrimage, men, women, or children? How long does it take? How do people travel? What do they take with them? What do they do when they reach the holy place? Do they bring anything back with them? Thank you.